Hello, welcome to the Brain Scrub. My name is Glenn Sollers. Thanks for tuning into today's episode. It has been a while since I recorded. My wife and I are now semi-retired and we can now vacation whenever we want. So we were in Mexico for 3 weeks and had an outstanding time along the Baja Peninsula. And I always love Mexico because the culture is addictive to me, where people, they don't necessarily have the easiest life at times. And nonetheless, they are in community with others. They seem to have a great time. They're strong family ties. There's connection amongst people. People don't get bothered by other people by the looks of it. And it's just such a peaceful culture in many respects, despite what we hear about Mexico and the cartels and everything. The majority of Mexicans are incredibly caring and lovely and friendly people who have strong hearts, who are proud of their country. And it's always a pleasure to go to Mexico for me. It's in fact my favorite destination in the world, especially when it comes to the inner cities like Mexico City and Puebla and those places. I just find are so captivating. And again, it's connection, community. And what I want to talk about in today's episode is this season, this holiday season, is never an easy one for me. And I would have to say that parents who are alienated from their kids or estranged from their kids or children or child probably are the strongest people that I know out there, because what we endure is so difficult. And I know our kids had a tough time as well. And probably what they're enduring with their alienated parent is not an easy thing to go through either for them. However, as somebody who's being rejected, we always want to be valued. We want to do something of value. We want to be cared for. We want people to love us, especially when it comes to our child. And when a child rejects you, it is a hit to our emotion, our identity. And as they say, silence can be a killer. The sound of silence is deafening, is something else that we hear. This is true when people don't choose to work through problems, when they don't choose to understand the reality of this other side and seek one another's perspectives and work through issues. It breaks apart families at times and friends by being stuck in your way of seeing things and not understanding the other side. And as alienated parents, we go through this. We become rejected by our child or children. There's generally no objective reason for it. And in the most part, it's based on a manipulative parent that belittles the other parent in front of that child, amongst other things. And as an alienated parent, because you're not being spoken to, you can't stand up for yourself. And then to boot, the judicial system seems to favor the alienating parent and doesn't get any more information. It is just terrible what happens. And to feel this sense of rejection is so difficult. And there's a gift in it all. The gift is self-discovery, taking ownership of what you did or did not do, to build communities, to focus on yourself, because it is your own journey. Your kids have their own journey. You have your own journey to become a better human being every day, to see that incremental improvement. So hopefully one day when my child comes back to my life, I'll be a far better and connected and loving father to my child. However, there are movements out there going the other direction in terms of standing up for oneself as an alienated parent or as an estranged parent. One that I just learned about yesterday was doormat moms, where they're speaking out against their alienating or estranged children. and to express their side. Because as an alienating parent, we don't have a chance to speak our side. And then there's a risk in doing that. There's a risk in sharing the truth about what's going on. The problem that I'm having is that I have a son who is very successful in social media. He has his own platform where he shares his truth about things with his partner that he does this with. And I hear lies, I hear accusations, I hear insults such as he and his mom call me Voldemort, that he calls my family Nazis. It's just so terrible. But then on the other hand, he must have so much hate within him. And to live with that is a burden, but it's also driving his podcast. So he needs a story and a tagline that defines his podcast. And this is what he's doing right now. And he's in his early 20s. So it all makes sense that he needs to cling on to this. And I'm hoping one day he can stop spreading the lies and stop understanding what the actual truths are, what the facts are, not the data. We all have our own story about things, for sure. But is our story the truth? And for me, it took a lot of self-awareness training to realize that in my family situation, when I was younger, I pushed away my dad. He was just trying the best he could to be in my life, and I rejected him in many respects. And history repeats itself, and here we go again, right? But sadly, my dad passed away before I could make amends with him, and before I had this realization. I can only speak to his spirit, if his spirit exists or whatever. And that has helped me grow as an individual and see that family relations are so critical. We all do the best we can. And yes, we're going to get upset about things. Yes, we're going to have arguments. But if we can resolve those arguments and work through these things and get into the conflict, which many people are afraid to do. We also have certain family habits. Like one family that I know, they have a tendency to run away from problems. They learn that from their family of origin. So what happens is they don't deal with the problems. They just put them aside, run away, and then people suffer. You lose time. We only have a certain amount of time in this world with people. And family are important. Yeah, we don't live with them, but the family member is going to be essentially the one that's always there if they ever need you or you ever need them. To not have those connections and to hold on to anger and resentment. I mentioned this before in other podcasts. It's a famous line, and that is anger and resentment's like drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. But I want to go back to being an alienated parent. Is we can choose to suffer through this. And I have suffered through this. It's been so difficult. But by taking an attitude of growth, development, betterment of self, focus on self, doing what you love doing, embracing the freedom that you may have, and knowing that, you know what, we all have our own path. You may have given birth to that child, and of course, there's a connection there, and they're going to learn their lesson eventually, and they're going to be suffering. All this suffering that's generated. So what my family's going through with not having connection with my son, they're suffering too. The amount of suffering that is created by this situation is unbelievable. And it causes stress, it causes sadness, it causes anxiety, it causes disease. And the alienating parent, for whatever reason, doesn't understand that. And it's all about them, based on their insecurities. Maybe they had poor family relations, which I know in my case, my ex-wife did. She didn't have a father around. She had a terrible relationship with her mother. She had a terrible relationship with her stepfather. And now my son's going through that too. And I didn't have the best relationship with my dad. We can stop this madness. But again, if we can grow from it. And this is one of these Japanese principles that I recently read about, these habits that Japanese people have that have encouraged them to live longer and be healthier, such as not overeating, realizing what actions am I taking and what impact will that have on actions. I always wondered why in Tokyo, as an example, things were so quiet, especially in the subway. People don't talk. And it's because you're conscious of how your interactions will impact others. So here where I live, people just speak on their phone, on transit, everybody can hear the conversation. But there it's different. It's like, okay, I'm about to make this action. What's going to be the reaction? And I wish more of us had that versus thinking about ourselves and our own ego needs. And as an alienating parent to say, you know what, I wonder what taking this child away from their other parent's going to do to them. I wonder what the impact's going to be long term. It seems when these decisions are made by these alienating parents, and I know in a lot of cases it's due to borderline personality disorders or some sort of personality disorders in a lot of cases, but not always. Sometimes alienation is justified, especially when there's physical abuse. I wonder what they're thinking. Like, why can't they take a step back and realize, you know what, this is about me. I'm doing it for me. And I'm the only one that's going to benefit, I think. But eventually what might happen with these alienating parents is that they are going to be alienated from their kids because they'll realize that they've been fed lies about the other parent. It's going to show up one day, likely. And there's so many examples of that out there in the world where alienating children finally wake up and reject the parent that alienated them. And to die alone is not a good thing. And sadly, I experienced that with a family member recently where they died alone. But they also pushed a lot of people away and didn't invite them into their lives. And this is the sad truth. So my message is anybody who's being alienated out there, you are a strong, resilient, caring, compassionate individual. We don't deserve this. And what doesn't kill us is going to make us stronger. And for one to live a life where you feel and are rejected by the one family member that should be closest to you is quite a feat. To celebrate your gifts for being able to deal with this. Resilience is getting us through this brutal world that we seem to be living in right now, where there's a lack of compassion for others, where there's us versus them mentality, where we have instant gratification on things, where we can easily get into fights and just push people away and block them from social media, block them from phone calls, block them from visits. What are we doing, everybody? More so in this Western world. What are we doing? Why is it that we're not living in community and knowing that we're all human beings? Yes, there are things that may be wrong with people that we deal with, but if we don't address the issue and resolve problems, we're going to create more and more of a divide, which is leading to hatred, which is leading to killing, which is leading to murder, all because we're not taking a step back to understand the other side or even engage in the conversation and would rather avoid the conflict and take it out in toxic ways. How Christmassy is that? Not at all. There's a gift in resolving conflict. There's a gift in having conversations, and I've experienced it so many times. And maybe this holiday season, to give somebody that you're not talking to the gift of dialogue. That is the greatest gift. The things we own will come and go and eventually end up in a landfill. But the memories we create by having others in our lives and being with those other people is a legacy we can all live. But we need to be willing to have the dialogue, address the conflict, and not run away from things. Folks, thanks for listening.